the World War II has broken out, and how this World War II is going to have a huge impact on India and freedom struggle. Now, today we will start with a small and yet important movement that is called the Indian National Army, the INA. So, this is what we cover under the section that is called the Revolutionary Movement Phase 3. Could you quickly recollect the revolutionary movements in the earlier phases, the first phase, second phase? Could you name some important leaders in the first phase of revolutionary movements? A quick recap. Any important leaders of phase 1 revolutionary movement?
I don't know if it is correct, like
Yeah,
Bhagat Singh and Saifuddin Kichlu.
Kichlu. Yeah, Bhagat Singh would come in the second phase of revolutionary movement. Yeah, and they are not necessarily revolutionary like the Saifuddin Kichlu, Satyapal Malik. They are all the important leaders of Congress who were arrested. Because of them, the Jallianwala Bagh incident would take place. Now, you can say one of the important leaders of the first phase of revolutionary movement was Aurobindo. I hope you are able to see the screen. Khudiram Bose. Okay, he was one of the first revolutionaries who was who was to be hanged. Then Bhaga Jatin. Then we were discussing about the Prafulla Kumar Chaki. Okay, so Mohanlal Dhingra, Bikaji Kama. I hope we covered all this. Okay, so this is in the very first phase of revolutionary struggle. Okay, the first phase of revolutionary struggle, and this also involved the assassination of Lord Hardinge, Rash Bihari Bose, and the important freedom fighters which who launched the freedom struggle outside India, abroad. The most important of that being the Gadar Party, and we also discussed about the Kumagata Maru incident, okay, which happened in 1914. Now, all these are some important, you can say, features which happened in the first phase of revolutionary movement. Could it, I hope you're able to at least recognize the photographs. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So this is in the first phase of revolutionary movement, and in the second phase of revolutionary movement, we have seen the Chittagong Armory Raid, Surya Sen, Preeti Lata Vadedar. Then we have also seen the Kakori conspiracy. Later, Ram Prasad Bismil and Ashfaqullah Khan were caught and hanged. And we have also seen about the Bhatukeshwar Dutt, who was along with Bhagat Singh, would be arrested for throwing the bombs on the Central Legislative Assembly. Then, apart from this, we have also seen about the important revolutionaries like Rajendra Lahiri or Nath Gupta, Chandrasekhar Azad, so Jatindranath Das. All these are the important uh, fighters of the revolutionary movement in phase 2. And again, the most important of these fighters, no doubt, would be Bhagat Singh. Okay, I hope like I'm just giving you a quick update on whatever we have discussed in the previous revolutionary movements. Now, the first phase of revolutionary movements happened in 1910. The second phase of revolutionary movement happened in 1920s. But uh, if someone wants to speak, please go ahead. Otherwise, keep your mics on mute. There's some noise. Okay. Uh, Please unmute if you want to speak. Okay. Now, the second phase of revolution movement, again, we have seen that the Bhagat Singh and his associates, so they were caught and they were hanged in 1931. Now, this was the story, or you can say, recap of the second phase of revolution movement. Now, after the second phase of revolution movement, we have seen the Congress became very active, like the civil disobedience movement launched by Gandhi, and further later the Pune Pact, the communalism, and also the Dalit movements were also on rise. So you can see that this was also the time that the mainstream freedom struggle was gaining momentum. That is why you can see that revolutionary movements did not take off as they were having during 1910s and 1920s. So I hope you could recollect all the discussion on the revolutionary movements. We have seen that revolutionary movement, the first phase happened before 1900 and maybe 14, 15, 16, and the second phase started between 1920s to 1930s. Okay, this is a third second phase, 1920s to 1930s. Now here, why there is no much revolutionary movements 1916 to 1920? The reason is the mainstream political struggle is going on. Like if you see 1916, the Home Rule League was started. Then further later Gandhi would come. Then Champaran, Ahmedabad and Kedah Satyagrahas would be going on. Further translated to Rowlatt and even further the Khilafat and non-cooperation movement. Now, whenever there is some activity in the mainstream freedom struggle, we have seen that the revolutionary activities are sidelined. And whenever there is a lull in the political activity in the mainstream, we can see that there is a rise of revolutionary movements. I hope we also discussed what is the first phase and second phase of revolutionary movement, how they are same, how they are different. Okay, any questions from the last sessions on revolutionary movements? Okay, if it is clear, we'll go to the next phase of revolutionary movement, that is the third phase of revolutionary movement. Here, the INA, Subhash Chandra Bose and his contributions would come into picture. Now, coming to the third phase of revolutionary movement. Now, why the third phase of revolutionary movements start? Again, there is some kind of lull in the political activity. That is, there is some kind of inactivity at the union level or in the mainstream freedom struggle. We have seen in 1939, once the World War II has broken out, all major freedom fighters would be put behind the bars. So they were either house arrested or they were, so that house arrest is called interned. INTURREN, interned. Interned means they are house arrested. They are kept under the confinement or they are put behind the actual prison. So either way, the freedom struggle has, you can say, the momentum which has been picked up all these years had to be stopped for some time. And because of this, again, we can see that the rise of the revolutionary activities which would be going on. Now, this Indian National Army is very important. Again, as I told, it is very short, but yet it is very important. It is very short-lived because 1942 to 1945, there are the important contributions of INA, but it is very important because of the impact it has left on the country. Now, if you could recollect, there was one revolutionary, okay, who would escape from India in 1915, and he would start an organization that is called Indian Independence League. Now, could someone recollect the name of that person, the important person who started the Indian Independence League? A famous revolutionary from phase one. He is Raj Bihari Bose. Okay, he is Raj Bihari Bose. Now, what are the important things he has done before going to Japan? Now, he was one of the key organizers of the Ghadar struggle, okay, which would further translate into Ghadar movement. And we can see that the Raj Bihari Bose also played a role in assassination of Lord Hardinge. So the assassination of Lord Hardinge, though it was not successful, he was playing an important role. And further here, after this attack on Lord Hardinge, Raj Bihari Bose tries to organize the Ghadar revolution, but this was also the time the World War I would start. Now, once the war starts, he would escape from India and he would reach Japan. And in Japan, he would start establishing an important organization that is called Indian Independence League. Again, the purpose of this Indian Independence League is to fight the British from outside. That means to gather the volunteers who wanted to fight against the British and would wanted to overthrow the British rule in the world. But this was not successful. By the British, this was declared to be an terrorist organization because this was using the methods of violence. And once this was established, further later, the World War II breaks out in 1939. When 1939 World War II is broken. Now, what happens is, as I told that on one side, Britain, France, and Soviet Union and USA. On other side, the Japan, Germany, and Italy. Okay, these are called Axis powers. These are called Allied powers. Now, India on the side of British Empire was fighting against the Japan because in Asia, the enemy for the British is Japan, and in Asia, one major, you can say, the source of revenue or manpower the British is having, that is India. So, in fact, this would be translated into a war between India and Japan, though India and Japan do not have any traditional enmity. I hope you understood. On British side, Indian were waging the war against the against the Japanese. Now, this was the time when the Japanese army was winning. That means the British army had to face some reverses. We have discussed that in 1942, the Japanese were advancing on all the three routes: the land route through Myanmar, the sea route, okay, through Andaman Nicobar, and through the air route as well. Now, on all the three routes, the Japanese army was making the advances. Now, during this time, some of the British forces were captured. That means, when I say British forces, in addition to the British, the Indian soldiers were also be captured, and they were taken as prisoners of war. They are called, in short, in political term, they are called POWs. They are called prisoners of war. That means those enemy soldiers who were caught, okay, they would be arrested by the Japanese army, and they would be kept under detention. Now, the Japanese army thought that these are Indians. We do not have any traditional enmity with Indians. Now, Indians are also fighting the war with British. Japan is also fighting the war with British. Why not take the help of these Indians, that is, those Indians who were caught prisoners of war, and launch a war against the British, because they are the soldiers of British army. They know the ins and outs of the British army. Why not take their help and use them against the British? Now, these prisoners of war had little choice but to agree with the Japan's orders. I hope the story is clear. Any questions till now? That is, the Indians who were caught by the Japanese, now they would be used against the same British. They were called prisoners of war. Now, this Japanese army who has caught these prisoners of war, now one more important soldier of the British army, his name is Captain Mohan Singh. Now, Captain Mohan Singh would be elevated to the position of the commander of all these prisoners of war, and Indian National Army was established. This Indian National Army is called Azad Hind Force. Indian National Army, which is called Azad Hind Force. Now, this Azad Hind Force would be merged with Indian Independence League with the help of the support of Raj Bihari Bose. Now, I hope the story is clear. Now, you can see the photograph of Captain Mohan Singh along with Major Fujiwara of Japan. By this time, now the way Indian Independence League was formed by Raj Bihari Bose in 1920s to 1940s. This Indian Independence League would be further merged with Indian National Army or Azad Hind Force. Now, what is this Azad Hind Force? This would consist of the prisoners of war, that is of Indian soldiers who were caught by the Japanese, and they would be used against the British enemy. Now, why the Japanese is helping Indians to fight to attain its independence? Not because they love India, but because they hate British. I hope this is clear till this one. Now, here you will observe that till this 1942 establishment of INA, there is no Subhash Chandra Bose in the whole picture. Okay, that means till this particular point of time, you cannot see anywhere the role of Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, I hope if this story is clear till what the INA or Azad Hind Force was established. Now we will go to the next one on Subhash Chandra Bose and his contributions. Any questions till now? Okay, now coming to the Subhash Chandra Bose, and again, as I told that the important leaders, each and everything becomes important. Like larger the leader, the minute questions can be asked from the exam point of view. Now again Subhash Chandra Bose is the important leader. Now each and everything becomes important about Bose. Now a quick biography of Bose. He was born in Cuttack. Cuttack, today it is in Odisha, but that point of time it was part of the Bengal province. The, could you recollect when Odisha was separated from Bengal? Which year? I think we discussed in detail. By Government of India Act 1935. Government of India Act 1935, the Odisha was separated from Bengal and with Cuttack as its capital. Now till 1935, Odisha and Bengal were together with Calcutta as its capital. Okay. Now, when Subhash Chandra Bose was born in 1897, he was born in Cuttack, which was a part of the Bengal province. And he was educated. He was born in an affluent family. Okay. His father was a lawyer in the British Empire, and he was educated in Calcutta. And further later, he went to London to pursue his civil service, the Indian civil services. Now, by this time, he will go to London to pursue the Indian civil service. The context becomes important because by this time he also developed some kind of hatred against the British because he felt that we are just conforming to what the British is saying. In fact, this was some of the one important thought that Subhash Chandra Bose would get, and this kind of independent thinking would lead him to go towards the philosophical angle. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose would be very much attracted by the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda, and he would go out from his home for almost like 6 7 months, so without informing to even to his parents, and he would be inclined towards philosophy. And further later, he'll come back home, and as per the persuasion of his parents, he would go to London to pursue the Indian civil services. Now, after getting in through the civil services, later this was the time in 1921 when the non-cooperation movement would start in India. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose, without any doubt, on the call of Gandhi and the top leaders of Congress, he would leave the civil services. That means he will sacrifice his career for the country, and in 1921 he would come back to India and join the Indian National Congress. He will also start a newspaper that is called Swaraj. And within no time, who is the ideological guru of Subhash Chandra Bose? Anyone? Any? Just like who was the ideological guru of Gandhi? Hmm. No,
Rajagopalachari.
come on, no, not Rajagopalachari. He was Gopal Krishna Gokhale. The political guru of Gandhi was Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Now, who was the political guru of Bose? It was Chittaranjan Das. Now, Chittaranjan Das was also from Bengal. Okay, leading from Bengal. The events in Bengal. So, Subhash Chandra Bose was also from Bengal province. So, both Bengalis met in Congress, and Chittaranjan Das became the ideological guru of Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, you can see from here, from 1921, after joining into Congress, the Chittaranjan Das philosophy, the right-wing philosophy. As you know, the Chittaranjan Das was a key leader in the establishment of Swaraj Party. Now, along with Chittaranjan Das, he would also come out of Congress partially. Okay, in 1923, if you could recollect, there was Swarajist Party, which was established by Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru. Along with Chittaranjan Das, Subhash Chandra Bose would come out and he would also contest in the elections. Now, being a very popular leader, he was also becoming the president of All India Youth Congress and also the secretary of Bengal State Congress. Now, by 1924, within 3 years, he would contest the elections and he would become the CEO of Calcutta Corporation. By 1930, he would become the mayor of Calcutta. Now, as I told that in 1919 Government of India Act, diarchy was introduced. That is, Indians who could get elected, they will not get important posts, but other posts like in municipality or in corporations only they would be allowed. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose would become the mayor of Calcutta in no time. I hope this is clear, the early life of Subhash Chandra Bose and his participation. Now, when he becomes a key leader in the Bengal after the death of Chittaranjan Das, now Subhash Chandra Bose becomes the key leader in Bengal, and as I as I was saying, Bengal is a very important province where the activities, all the important activities would be unfolding in Bengal. If you see the Swadeshi movement or non-cooperation or CDM, in all this, Bengal plays a very active role in the anti-British struggle. Now, during this time, Subhash Chandra Bose would also author a book that is called Indian Struggle. He will start a newspaper called Swaraj, and his book is called Indian Struggle. Now, this particular book was banned by the British for his seditious content. That means in this book, he has described about the way we have to oppose the British Empire, and because of all these reasons, Subhash Chandra Bose's book was condemned by the British and it was banned for its seditious content. Now, during this time, for his nationalist activities, Bose would be arrested when he was still the CEO of the Calcutta Corporation. Now, at the midnight, the Bose would be arrested, and the British would call him. He is not only a threat to Bengal, but he is also a threat to the British Empire. Now, for that reason, Bose would be sent out of India, that is in Mandalay. Mandalay is in Myanmar currently, and from here, the his imprisonment in Myanmar would be like during this time, the boss would try to learn more about different political philosophies. That means his ideology would be changing. Till this particular point of time, the boss ideological philosophy would be based on the philosophies of Swami Vivekananda or right-wing leaders like Chittaranjan Das. But for this point of time, after his arrest and detention in Mandalay. Now, Bose started learning more about the left wing authoritarianism and socialism. Now, in fact, the Bose contradicts himself in his ideological philosophy. That means he would be inclined towards extreme right wing, that is what we call it as fascism, as well as extreme left wing, that is what we call it as the left wing extremism. Now, Bose would be inclined on both. Now, this is something which is ironical. Like as I told that Bose was not very inconsistent in his philosophy. Now, his philosophy would be over time would be, you can say, evolving, but he was very clear on his thoughts. Now, how Bose and Gandhi are different. Now, for Bose, what is non-negotiable is something called freedom. That is, freedom of the country is paramount. Okay, that is, at whatever be the cost, first we should get freedom. Now, this was the most important or the core thought of Bose. Now, what was something which is most important for Gandhi? Could you recollect? The most important thing for Gandhi, which is never negotiable, it was non-violence. Could you recollect? Non-violence became one of the most important weapons for Gandhi. Now, for Gandhi, non-violence is non-negotiable. Now, for Bose, freedom is non-negotiable. That means for Gandhi, you can do whatever you want, but you should not stick to violence. But for Bose, violence is accepted as long as you are fighting for freedom. Now, this is where their political philosophies differ. Now, what is more important for Bose is political freedom. Now, what is more important for Gandhi is social and economic freedom. That is, what Gandhi believed is once Indians are socially and economically independent, then political independence will automatically follow. That is, only political independence does not mean anything to Gandhi. But for Bose, political independence is the most important and non-negotiable thing. And now for Bose, he believed that social and economic independence would follow for them. Now I hope the approach of Gandhi and Bose are different because in fact both wanted freedom. But what kind of freedom they wanted? They are having a vision for the country. Their opinions or their paths are different, but their end goal is same. See, for Gandhi or Bose, the end goal is freedom of the country. But for Bose, the political freedom is more important. But for Gandhi, social and economic liberation is more important than political independence. I hope the differences in their thoughts is clear. Any questions till now? Please do let me know or stop me. Now, okay. Now, Bose, who was a very important leader by 1930s, he would be elevated to even much more importance by 1935. By 1935, he would become one of the most important leaders, not only at the regional level, but at the national level. Now, for a leader, like in 1930s, he was still in his 30s. Okay, so 1930s, like as I told, he was born in 1897. In 1935, he was still 38 years of age. Now, during this particular time, he would be a leader of a national level party, that is Congress. Okay, now this is one of the most important achievements of Bose. Now, during this particular time, now Bose would try to project his ideology. Now, what Bose would say is we have to oppose the British tooth and nail, not only on the social and economic front, but also on the political front. Now, as I told that the same view would be taken over by Jawaharlal Nehru also. In fact, Jawaharlal Nehru and Motilal Nehru both had differences on this particular instant. If you could recollect the Congress sessions in 1928 and 29, where 1928 it will talk only about dominion status, and 1929 Congress would demand Purna Swaraj from British. Now, on the similar lines, almost all the top leaders of Congress, including Nehru, would be in the Subhash Chandra Bose camp, because you can see there is some kind of generational gap between the Gandhi 1869, Subhash Chandra Bose 1897. Both have something in common, like both are well educated, both were trained in London, giving up their careers for the country. But you can notice that there is always a 30-year gap, almost a 30-year gap. So you can see there is some kind of generational shift from the Gandhian ideology and from Bose ideology. So we have to understand the Bose views from the context. Okay, from the context of Gandhi, from the context of Bose. Now, in 1938, there were elections for the party president in Congress. Now, Bose would contest and he would become the president of Congress in 1938 in Haripura. So, could you recollect like Haripura session of Congress, which is very important when the socialist thoughts would be presented. And in 1939, he would become even more popular because of World War One, the starting of the World War One, and even he will defeat the Gandhian candidate Pattabhi Sitaramaya. But after becoming the president of Congress, now Congress, though he was the president of Congress, the actual decisions are taken by Gandhi. Now, if you could recollect, just like uh, maybe something similar to Sonia Gandhi and Manmohan Singh. Okay, so though Manmohan Singh is a prime minister, all decisions are not taken by Manmohan Singh but taken by the party president Sonia Gandhi. So in the same way, though Bose would become the president of Congress, all important decisions are taken over by Gandhi. That means still there is a lot of followers of Gandhi within the Congress who do not want the active participation of Congress in many movements. Now, because of the ideological differences with Gandhi, the Bose would try to come out of Congress despite having a popular support, because he feels that still Congress is under the only guidance of Gandhi. And you can notice that Gandhi was not an active member of Congress. Gandhi resigned from the primary membership of Congress in 1930s. From here, Gandhi is nowhere officially related to Congress, but all decisions in Congress, who should become president, what kind of, you can say the resolution the Congress should adopt, everything was decided from Wardha, not from the Congress headquarters. Now, this is where Bose would be having ideological differences with Indian National Congress as well as Gandhi, and he would exit from Indian National Congress and establishes the Forward Bloc. Now, Forward Bloc is a political party. Okay, Forward Bloc is a political party which was established in 1939. Okay, now today also this Forward Bloc is a active political party in West Bengal. Now today it is called All India Forward Bloc. Okay, even today there are leaders who are fighting on the name of Bose and Indian National Army, even in West Bengal. I hope the story is clear till now, till 1939, Subhash Chandra Bose. Okay, now what is the contribution of Subhash Chandra Bose in freedom struggle before INA? I hope you will be able to write 200 words. Okay, quick summary, like sacrificed his career for the country, joined Congress, became the important leader of not only Congress but also the Bengal region. And from the regional leader, he would also be elevated to the national leader. And he was interned by the British, detained by the British, and he was sent in exile to live in exile. And this particular time he would utilize to learn or refine his philosophy or his political thoughts. And he was declared as enemy number one by the British because they felt that Bose is more dangerous than Bhagat Singh because Bhagat Singh was forefront. Reason is he himself was actively participating, but Bose was not like that for British because on one hand he did not anywhere participate in violence, but on the other hand he was supporting the revolutionaries from behind. This ideological support is more dangerous from the British point of view. Now, because of this reason, he was declared as one of the most dangerous enemy for the British, and uh, 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 his living in Bengal or India is very dangerous for this. That is why he was sent to Myanmar. So, could you please enable the screen share? Okay, so welcome back. I hope again a quick confirmation. I'm able to you're able to hear me, view me, and see the desktop. All the three. Quick, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we were discussing about the contribution of Subhash Chandra Bose before he would launch the Indian National Army. Now this is where the you can say the events would unfold. Now in 1941, what would happen is after the launch of World War II, as I told, all important leaders would be house arrested, were put behind the bars, even including Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose would also be arrested, and he would be put behind the. I mean, he was house arrested. As I told, it was called interned. Subhash Chandra Bose was interned, and during this time, one Pathan would come to visit Subhash Chandra Bose, and the Pathan would leave the house of Subhash Chandra Bose within no time. But after that, the soldiers who were guarding the Bose home would realize there is something wrong. When they go inside to see, they will see that the Pathan is still sitting inside the home. Now they will realize that it was not the Pathan who went out, but Subhash Chandra Bose in changed his attire and he would escape from his house arrest. Now once he is once he escapes from the British from his house arrest, he would cross the border and he would enter Kabul, which was part of Afghanistan. Now, on a different fake passport, as a insurance agent, he would escape to Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan he would reach to Russia. This is during the time of 1941. Now he would reach to Russia, where from Russia he would go or enter Europe through Russia, and he would marry a Austrian woman, Emily, and he would also meet the Axis power leaders, including the Mussolini and Hitler. Again, it is not confirmed. This is where you can say a lot of debates happen whether he met Hitler or whether he met Mussolini. But no doubt he would have met the top leaders of the Axis powers to take their help. Now, Gandhi would completely oppose this particular activity. Why Gandhi would oppose this activity is he was completely against the fascism. Now, if you are taking the help of Japan or Germany, now why do they help India? Because to defeat the British. Now, till 200, for 200 years, we are under the control of the British. But if you take the help of Japan, now we will be under the control of Japan. Now, Gandhi never wants this to happen. But as I told, but at the same time, what Subhash Chandra Bose ideology is, at any cost, we should get independence. At any cost, we should get freedom. That is, we cannot trust the British. For Subhash, the freedom is non-negotiable. The political independence of India is non-negotiable. Now, uh, uh, Germany says that we cannot actively support India, but we can passively give some kind of support. Now, in a submarine from Germany, Subhash would reach to Japan. Now, by the time he will reach Japan, it is 1943. That is, it will take 2 years for him to uh, 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 escape from his home to Afghanistan, to Russia, to Europe, to Italy, to Germany, to Japan. Now, all this you have to write in when you're writing your exam. You need not write all this story. Maybe if you want, you can write down Subhash Chandra Bose in 1941. Subhash Chandra Bose in 1941 escaped from house arrest. Escaped from house arrest. Escaped from house arrest in a mysterious and daring manner. In a mysterious and daring manner. Okay. Full stop. Full stop. He would approach Germany and Italy. He would approach Germany and Italy for their support. For their support in the freedom struggle. For their support for the freedom struggle. But when denied, but when denied, when denied, he would reach Japan. He would reach Japan. I hope within 2 lines you have completed all the story. Okay, so when you're writing the exam, I hope you will not focus on the events which happened in your life, rather what is his political ideology becomes more important. Now, after reaching Japan in 1943, he would establish, after reaching Japan in 1943, with the Japanese support, with the Japanese support, with the Japanese support, he would establish a provisional government. He would establish a provisional government in Singapore. Now, 1943 was the time when Japanese army would annex Singapore. Singapore, which was a British colony, would be under the control of Japanese forces. Now, on October 21st, 1943, Bose would establish a provisional government in Singapore. That is, he will say that now the government of India is not in Delhi or Shimla. The government of India is in Singapore. From here, I am going to lead it. Now, this provisional government, he will call it as RG Hukumat Azad Hind. Okay, or in short, it is called Azad Hind. It's not Azad Hind Fauj. It's called Azad Hind, which is a provisional government. Now, for this provisional government, he would become the head of the state. He will say that our government is, this is the legitimate government. Maybe today also you can see the provisional government of Tibet residing in India. The Dalai Lama, the provisional government, that is, they believe that the actual government is not in Beijing, but the actual government of Tibet is the Dalai Lama and his associates. That's called the government in exile, provisional government in exile. In the same way, he will establish his own government. He will say, my government is in Singapore. Now, this is the actual government for India. And for this government, there would be army. And this army would be lent by Raj Bihari Bose. Now, the Raj Bihari Bose and Subhash Chandra Bose would meet in Singapore, and Raj Bihari Bose says, whatever the army I have raised, that is Indian Independence League, which was merged with first INA, which was raised by Captain Mohan Singh, both would give the support to Subhash Chandra Bose army. Now, in fact, Bose did not start INA. Bose would lead INA from here. I hope the story is clear because this is where the prelims questions can be framed. Maybe they make you statements like Subhash Chandra Bose established Indian National Army. Subhash Chandra Bose established Indian Independence League. Which of the following statements are correct or incorrect? So I hope the story is clear till now. Any questions? Okay, I'll take it as a no. Now, once Subhash Chandra Bose takes the lead, the Indian National Army would come to a different level. Now, a top leader in Congress, that is one famous or top leader in Congress, now he has come out and now he is leading the Indian National Army. Though this would give a huge boost to the Indian National Army. Now, this Indian National Army would be having different regiments. So, different regiments would be named after the top leaders. Like there was the Bose regiment, there was the Gandhi regiment, there was Nehru regiment, there was Jhansi regiment, okay, which was the first women contingent. Okay, this was the time when women were not allowed into the army. Okay, the Rani Lakshmibai regiment, which was headed by Captain Lakshmi Sehgal. So all these are the most important contributions of the Indian National Army. Okay, now this Indian National Army, with the help of Japanese support, would start its advances, and it wanted to free India, where Bose would give the famous slogan, Delhi Chalo. I hope the famous slogans of Bose like "Give me blood, give me freedom," or Jai Hind. Okay, so all these became the very important slogans of freedom struggle. Now, the Bose, I mean, the Indian National Army, headed by the different regiments, would launch its attack on the British India. Now, this was a time. This was a time when Subhash Chandra Bose addresses the nation, and he will call Gandhi as the father of the nation. I hope this one is also clear. Though Subhash Chandra Bose and Gandhi were having the political differences, now what they hugely admired each other for their sacrifices. Okay, now this is also something which you have to keep in mind. And now already in India, the political situation in India is very you can say turbulent. So on one side we have Gandhi, on one side we have Nehru, one side we have Patel, one side we have Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Now each of these leaders were having some, you can say, section of people supporting them. Now Gandhi, he was being supported by pacifists. Nehru was being supported by those people who were having a socialist agenda. Patel were being supported by those people who are having a right-wing agenda. And Rajendra Prasad was more having a localized support from the peasants. Whereas C. Rajagopalachari was having the support from the South Indian groups. Ambedkar was having the support of Dalits, or Jinnah was having the support of Muslims. Now already the top leaders are having, you can say, a localized support. Now what is something unique about Subhash Chandra Bose is he was having a support from almost all the sections of society. That is from socialists or right wing, from left wing, or Hindus or Muslims or Dalits. Now this is something which is very important. Already the leaders are having their own support basis. But whereas Subhash Chandra Bose was having something, a kind of support which is much beyond the whatever the lines in which the India was divided. Now, according to some historians, now this would create unrest among the top leaders in India, because the top leaders, either Jinnah or Nehru or Patel or Rajagopalachari, now all these are having a support based from a particular section of Indians. Whereas Nehru, if he comes and if he succeeds, now it might be not impossible in those days, because taken the provided the Japanese advancements in Malaya or Singapore, it could be possible that it is not impossible. Now, if Bose comes and succeeds in taking over Delhi and defeating the British Empire, now with no doubt, he inarguably he would become the leader of the entire country, surpassing all these leaders. I hope why the historians would write that they are nervous or unrest. I hope it's clear. Now, again, when we are talking about this nervousness, you should not try to overemphasize on this nervousness because, as I told that, the debates which are there, Subhash Chandra Bose or Nehru. Now, these are less of academic debates and more of political debates. Okay, so when you are writing your answers, you should not be, uh, uh, you can say, more aligned towards the political debates which are happening. That when Bose was coming, Nehru was panicked. Okay, so this is some kind of political debates which are happening these days. Whenever the anti-Congress party would come to power, they try to project as Nehru was completely insecure about Bose return to India. But no doubt, Bose and Nehru had lot of things in common. They supported each other in 1920s, 1930s. In fact, both were against Gandhi as well. Okay, we were discussing that. Okay, the Gandhian idea. Both were against the Motilal Nehru's idea. So they were having differences. Does not mean they hate each other. Okay, this is something which you have to notice that this is the difference between the leaders of those times and leaders of today. That is, despite they were having political differences, they were having ideological differences. Does not mean they are against each other. In fact, they supported each other in their own way. So this is something which you have to always keep in your mind when you're writing about these leaders. Now, in 1945, the British, so the INA advances against the British forces. In fact, it would try to free the two important islands, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these two islands would be freed by Azad Hind Force, the Indian National Army, and they would be renamed as Shahid Dweep and Swaraj Dweep. In fact, parts of Manipur and Nagaland were also be freed by Indian National Army. But within no time, the British forces would regain momentum and Indian National Army could not advance further. The Indian National Army, all these people who were fighting on the behalf of Indian National Army would be caught by the British and they would be trials. These trials are called as the famous Indian National Army trials. Indian National Army trials. Now, one more question which is a mystery in history, that is what happened to Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, in the year 1945, it is said that Subhash Chandra Bose boards a plane which goes to Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China, which boards to Taiwan, but in a plane crash, he has died. Now, this is one set of theory which has given. Now, after the death of Subhash Chandra Bose, three important commissions were formed. One is in three important commissions by independent India, one by Nehru, one by Indira Gandhi, one by Vajpayee. Okay, 1956, 1970, and 2005. They are called Justice Shah Nawaz Commission, Justice Khosla Commission, and Justice Mukherjee Commission. Now, each of these reports, now all these are government committees. Now, each of these three reports gave their own perspective of what happened to Subhash. Now, the Shah Nawaz and Khosla Commission said that Subhash Chandra Bose had died in plane crash, whereas the Justice Mukherjee Commission said that the Subhash Chandra Bose did not die of plane crash, but he escaped from plane crash and went somewhere else, maybe probably to Russia, and came back to India. Now, this report is also very controversial because it contradicted the earlier reports. So, this is where till today the mystery remains what happened to Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, there are a lot of, you can say, other stories which cropped up about what happened to Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, how, whether who played a role in capturing him, or whether he was captured, or uh, whether he was living still. Okay, this is a complete story which is there, but UPSC is never going to ask the controversial questions. And more importantly, what is more important for us is not in debating how he would have died, what happened in his death, but rather what is more important is his life is more important for us. because his life is a important message what we have to learn rather than debating on his death. So this is something which we will leave it to the historians or academicians to debate. But as a student of UPSC, we are more concerned about what are the contributions of Subhash Chandra Bose in INA and before that. Now, this Indian National Army trials, one of the most important trials of Indian National Army is called Red Fort trial. The trial at Red Fort. Now, as I told that about 50,000 people, 50,000 prisoners of war were captured by Japan, and now the same soldiers were used under the INA. Now these soldiers were caught by British and they were sentenced to court martial. I hope you know court martial is a military court. Okay, it is a military court. They are subjected to court martial. These are called INA trials because they were part of British Empire. Now, on what grounds they supported the Japanese army? That is why their loyalty to British Empire was questioned, and they were tried under this INA trials. Now, during this INA trials, the famous of these INA trials was Red Fort trial, where three important leaders of Indian National Army, one is Prem Sehgal, Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon, and Shah Nawaz Khan. Now, all these are the three important leaders, and you have to also notice that the three important leaders are from different religious community. One Sardarji, one Hindu, and one Muslim. Now, this was also the time when the partition movements were going on. When the partition movements was going on, this INA trials gave one kind of, you can say, a last hope that all the three religious communities can be together. Now, this INA trials were defended by the most important lawyers of the country at that point of time. That most important lawyers like Nehru, Jinnah, okay, Asaf Ali, if you could recollect, Jinnah was also a lawyer, Nehru was also a lawyer. Now, these lawyers like Asaf Ali or Nehru or Jinnah and Kailash Nath Katju, Bhulabhai Desai, all these are the important lawyers, a team of lawyers, the most charismatic lawyers of India. They tried to defend the INA soldiers. Now, all this INA, the team who defected to the Japanese army, they were given the death punishment, capital punishment. But because of the efforts of all the teams of the lawyers, this death punishment was later commuted to life imprisonment. In those times, something like 10 years or 15 years. But luckily for them, within 1 year, India became independent. 1947, India became independent, and once India became independent, all the people in the INA trials were freed by the Indian government. Now, this is something a very important contribution of INA, which tried to show to the country that the three, irrespective of the religious communities or the religious hatred, the Indians can be together. Now, this is what a most important contribution of Subhash Chandra Bose. I hope I given all important facts related to INA and Bose. And any questions till now?
Sir, the number of soldiers in INA is around 50,000. What will be the corresponding figure in like Indian military at that point of time?
No, no,
Like
no, no,
when they
no. They could not
overpower the
overpower
Indian
British army because,
army.
as I told, that the British today, if you see the number of defense personnel we are having about 10 lakhs of, you can say, the army today. Maybe during the British time, this is for maybe 120 crores. We are having a population of 120 crores, about 10 lakhs. Maybe by fourth, maybe 2.5 lakh, maybe perhaps something like 2.5 lakhs. I'm just estimating it. So for 120 crores, maybe 10 lakhs of defense personnel we are having today. But maybe sometime, maybe 30 crores, they might be having 2.5 lakh. So 50,000 people against 2.5 lakh. Again, why the Indian National Army could not succeed? There are different reasons given by historians. One reason, one reason is the Japanese army, the reverses faced by Japan, because INA relied heavily on Japan. Okay, when the Japanese food supplies or when Japanese arms and ammunition could not reach on time, the INA forces have suffered. The second thing which paved way for their, you can say, defeat, you can say, why the INA could not succeed, is second thing is the bad climatic conditions. The bad climatic conditions, because when they were trying to cross the Myanmar, enter into India, you can see the northeastern part of India, there is a heavy rainfall. Okay, it is a, the terrain is also very inhospitable, like it is a forest, a hilly terrain, forest region, hilly terrain with heavy rainfall, because most of the supplies, whatever they bought, they were drenched in the rain, they were not working as well. But so there were different reasons. One is the bad weather, inhospitable terrain, and most importantly, what is there in the war is something which is missing, which is there in the war. It is they could not prolongly, they could not give a prolonged resistance to the British, because what happened to the British is very much seasoned. They are much more trained in these war efforts, because we have seen from 1757 the British were having continuous wars from 1757 to 1947. Fighting war is not something new for the British. Now they were seasoned in these wars. In fact, they were taking the support from different other groups. Like, for example, if there is a war in Bengal, they would use the Punjab soldiers, they would use the soldiers from Madras to suppress this one, so that they would not be loyal. In fact, the Indian National Army, it is never like a war between uh, uh, the Indian soldiers versus British soldiers. It is Indian soldiers versus Indian soldiers only. That is, on British side, Indian soldiers; on Indian side, Indian soldiers who were fighting against each other. In fact, this is more about diplomacy rather than direct war. In fact, no doubt Indian National Army fought very courageously. But in fact, wars are less about the courage. Wars are more about diplomacy. Wars are more about intelligence gathering. Wars are more about the local support. Now, all these places where INA would have, you can say, shortfalls compared to that of the British. So it could be all these, might be the reasons. How far this is, maybe it is a debate, open-ended debate, but all these are reasons. Like Japanese forces facing the reverses. Okay, Japanese forces facing the reverses. The Japanese arms ammunition supplies did not reach on time. Then bad weather, difficult terrain, and the diplomacy, or you can say the war experience of the British is no match. In fact, as I told, it is never like British versus INA. It is Indian soldiers on British side versus Indian soldiers on INA side. So because of all these reasons, this could not be successful. I hope I gave some reasons why the INA failed. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
Hope you will be able to write Subhash Chandra Bose, INA. Okay, and his contribution. Okay, and Captain Lakshmi Sehgal was a very important leader who led the Rani Lakshmibai regiment, and this was the first time, not only in India but in the world, a women battalion or a women regiment was created. As I told, till that point of time, there was a opinion that women cannot be fit for war, women cannot fight. Now this was made completely false by Bose. Now, as I told that these leaders like Bose or Gandhi or Nehru, they are ahead of their times. Okay, and because of these reasons, the contributions of uh, INA and Bose still remain with the Indians. So in your notes, I gave you the all important points. Okay, the way you have to prepare for your exam. So maybe once you have all the facts, I hope you'll be able to write good answers in your exam. So if you are clear, we'll go to the next topic. If any other questions. Okay, I'll take it as a no. So let us move on to the next one. Now, once this 1945 INA was captured, then the next, you can say, what we call the trouble for the British was awaiting. So till 1945, the war. Then during the war, the problems like the mainstream freedom struggle, like Quit India movement, And in addition to the Quit India movement, the movements like Quit India movement, there were also the struggles within the British Empire. Now within the British Empire, the last nail in the coffin of the British Empire, undoubtedly it is what we call it as Rin Mutiny, Royal Indian Navy Mutiny. Now as I told, like the British, they used to say that our rule is because of the civil services. The civil services is called as the steel frame of India. Now, how the British is able to rule India? It is with the help of civil services and army. Now, what they have noticed, what the British have noticed is there was a rebellion in Indian armed defense forces. That is in Navy. The soldiers in Navy, they stopped taking orders and they rebelled against the British soldiers. Now, this was, you can say, as I told, this Rin Mutiny or Royal Indian Navy Mutiny is something like a last nail in the coffin for the British. Once the British sensed that there are some cracks in our steel frame, they were smart enough. That means they came to realize that it is better to leave the country and go back. Okay, because the British were smart enough to realize that our days have ended in India. We cannot rule India further. As I told, like the British were smart enough to realize this and to understand this. Now, whenever there is a separation or partition, there are two types of separation or partition. So one type we call it as the Western type, one type that is Indian type. Now, maybe whatever be the separation, either it is brother, separation between brothers, separation between father and son, separation between wife and husband. So, okay, one is the Western style, one is the Indian style. Now, what is Indian style? So, where both of them would fight with each other till the end, then they get separated. And what is the Western style? They will shake hand with each other. One day the husband says, I want to get divorced. Okay, wife says, even I want the same, thinking of the same. They will shake hand and they will get separated. Now, why I am saying this is the separation between India and Britain is Western style, whereas the separation between India and Pakistan is our Indian style. Okay, I hope you understood it. Now, the British were smart enough. The British were, you can say, they are very practical people and they with less emotions. Now, once they sensed that our days have ended in India because of all the events which happened in the country, and also they have noticed that their own people, that is, their own civil servants or army, armed forces, they started resenting to their rule. Then they have completely came to a conclusion that we have to exit from India. There is no doubt we have to exit from India. Now, when they notice that they have to exit from India, let us make this exit on a very friendly note so that once we meet in a later date, maybe for example, in Raja or Maharaja from India goes to Britain, there should be some courtesy. And from in the same way, when their queen or king comes to India, there should be some courtesy. Let us, even after 200 years of exploitation, now our work is done. Let us go in a very friendly note. Now, once British have made up their mind that we have to leave India, then they started some few progress. Now, what are the events which have unfolded in 1946-47 becomes important for historians. So, the first thing which happened is the Wavell Plan. The first thing which happened during this particular time is Wavell Plan. So, there are important events. So, we were discussing about revolutionary movement, CR formula and Desi Gaikat Pact. Maybe it's factual. You can have a look at that. Now, the important things which happened after this Rin Mutiny is Wavell Plan and Shimla Conference, then Cabinet Mission Plan. Now, the Rin Mutiny happens in 1946, but even before that itself, they would notice that there is something wrong in our administration in the way we are working. Now, as I told, by World War II, let the World War II end, let us make out a plan and let us exit from this place. This is what the British were very clear of their intention. Once the British were clear on their intention, they would send a plan that is called Wavell Plan. Now, what is this Wavell Plan and Shimla Conference? Why Shimla is important for British? Can anyone tell me? Why Shimla? Why this conference has taken? Yeah. It is a summer capital of
Winter
British.
capital.
As you know that the capital of India was Delhi. From 1911, it was shifted to Delhi, and Shimla would become the summer capital for the British. Now, whenever the events would happen in June and July, it would be in Shimla. Now, the question for the British is to whom to transfer the power, to whom we have to give the power to, whether we have to give to Congress or whether we have to give to other parties. Because Congress is no doubt it is the largest political party, but it is not the only political party. Okay, we were discussing that there were different political parties which were emerging. Now, whom to give the power? That is a question to the British. The next question to the British: how to transfer the power? In what ways we have to transfer the power? Should we give the complete independence at once, or should we give some kind of dominion status? Then smooth transition of power, so that the transition should be smooth. Should it be done in phases? Should it be given at one stroke? No, that is a second question for British. And the third most important question for the British is there are for 200 to 50 years there are lot of British assets which are there in India, and there are lot of British citizens who are there in India. Now, how to ensure that these citizens and assets are transported back to Britain very safely? Now, this is perhaps the most important dilemma for the British. That is, nothing should happen to the British citizens. Now, how we would ensure that? Now, even after 200 years, as you know that in military, they would have brought the houses, their children might be studying. Now, all these people who were there in India for years together, if not centuries. Now, how to ensure that the safe passage to all the British citizens back to London? Now, this is the questions which are surrounding to the British. Now, I hope you got the questions which are the British is having. One is on uh, to whom to transfer the power, whether to Congress or Muslim League, how much to which one. Then second one, how to transfer, whether partially or completely at one stroke or in phases. Then the third question, how to ensure the safe passage of all our citizens to the country back to Britain. Now, for that reason, the first effort was called Wavell Plan or Shimla Conference. Now, in Wavell Plan and Shimla Conference, what Lord Wavell, who was a Governor General, he would call all the, this is an all party conference where he will call all the political leaders from Muslim League to Congress, from Ambedkar's party, from all these leaders, from all these political parties, he would call a all party meeting at Shimla where they wanted to discuss about transfer of power. Now, in Wavell Plan, they will say that we are going to give you the dominion status. We are going to give you the dominion status. As we discussed earlier, dominion status was talked about in August of our Cripps mission as well. But now the time has come because the World War II is over. Now, Wavell Plan, it says that we are going to give you the dominion status. Only two posts are with British. One is the Governor General and Army Chief. These two posts would be of British, but over time, as and when the time permits, we will discuss on the transfer of power. Now, they will say that we are going to give some concessions to the minorities. Those concessions are, if there is a, maybe if there are 15 ministers, let us take, I'm giving you some random figures. If there are 15 ministers, at least 5 ministers would be Muslims, maybe one third would be Muslims. Now, Jinnah would oppose to the Wavell Plan. He would say that we are okay with the complete thing, but if you are giving reservations to minorities, it should be based on political parties. That means if there are 15 ministers, 5 ministers you are saying it should be Muslims. But what Jinnah demands, it's not 5 ministers who should be Muslims, it should be 5 ministers who should be from Muslim League, not Muslims. I hope this is clear what Jinnah wanted. Now, Jinnah was in a mood to negotiate. Sorry, he is in no mood to negotiate. As I told, like Jinnah was using the partition or Pakistan as a bargaining chip so that he can get his political leverages happen. Now, when Jinnah said that in 1945, we do not want Muslim reservation, we want Muslim League reservation. I hope the difference is clear. Now, Congress and all other political parties opposed. Now, on what ways do we think that Muslim League is the sole representatives of Muslims? For example, even in Congress there are Muslims. Okay, if you see the Congress president itself, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, he himself was a Muslim. Now, how can we say that? How can you say that? Like in 1937 elections, we have seen that Muslim League was a disaster. The performance of Muslim League was disaster. How can you claim that you are the sole representative of Muslim? Now, Jinnah was very adamant. He do not want to negotiate. Now, Jinnah did not want to negotiate, and he called Maulana Abul Kalam Azad as poster boy. You know, poster boy. For example, let us take today in BJP. Even in BJP, by and large, was rejected by minorities. If you know that BJP is by and large like Muslims and Christians, by and large, they have rejected BJP as a minority, as a which is looking for the minority interests. But even in BJP, there are some leaders from Muslims like Mukhtar Naqvi. So all these leaders, Mukhtar Abbas. So all these leaders, they are they are often called as poster boys. Today, the Congress criticizes them as poster boys. That is, there would be Muslims, but they need not be looking for the interests of the Muslims. In the same way for the other minorities as well. Now, this is where Jinnah would say that though there are the Muslim members or Sikh members or Christian members in Congress, they are just poster boys. We are not going to touch them. Now, Muslim League is the sole representatives of all the Muslims. So that is why when you are giving the reservations, it should be not based on the Muslim League Muslims, but it should be rather given to the Muslim League. Now, Congress opposes as well as all other political parties, including the right wing. Uh, Hello, sir. Could you please enable the screen share? Okay. Hello, all. Welcome back again. Quick confirmation, please. All the three are okay. Audio, video, and desktop sharing. Okay. Thank you. So we were discussing about the events
Okay,
which
sir.
happened in 1945, why the Shimla Conference or Wavell Plan would not be successful. Because Jinnah was very adamant that he wanted the concessions to Muslim League rather than the Muslims. Now this is where the Congress as well as all other political parties would oppose Jinnah. In fact, the historians when they write about the criticism about partition, who should be blamed for partition. Now historians in 1928 blame Congress. Historians in 1937 blame Congress because for not honoring the pact. 1928 for not honoring the separate electorate, the commitment which was given by the Lucknow Pact. And now 1945 when they blame, the historians would blame Jinnah and Muslim League for failing these efforts. I hope this is clear. 28 and 37, Congress is responsible. 45, 46, League is responsible for partition. Now, when Indian historians write, they would not write much on 1928 and 1937. When Pakistani historians would write, they would not write much on the events which happened in 1945-46. Rather, they will only project 28 and 37 events. Now, as a neutral historian, now as you are preparing for civil services, you should be viewing the history from a neutral perspective. When you're writing in a neutral perspective, you should be able to write about all the three dimensions. How Muslim League is responsible, how Indian National Congress is responsible, and how British rule is responsible. Now, because of this reason, the Shimla conference would fail. That is, all parties could not come to a conclusion, and some historians also blame Wavell to calling off the Shimla conference. When the Shimla conference is not going in the right direction, Wavell would say we will end up this Shimla conference because this is nowhere leading to any conclusion, and this would be completely abandoned. So, in short, Wavell plan would would be a last attempt, or you can say a one final attempt to save the India from partition. In fact, cabinet mission plan would close the door. We will discuss that. Now, once the Shimla conference and Wavell plan is clear, we will go to the next one, that is cabinet mission plan. Any questions on the Wavell plan? So, could you quickly recollect what are the provisions of the Wavell plan? Three things. Okay, one is dominion status to India. Second one, except army chief and governor general, all other posts would be given to Indians. Third one, there would be reservations for Muslims. Okay, in the cabinet. Okay, these are the three important provisions given in the waiver plan. Why it has failed? Because of the third point, where Muslim League and other political parties did not have any common platform, could not come to a common platform. That's the reason the Wavell plan and Shimla conference would be a failure. Okay, now we'll go to the next one, that is the cabinet mission plan. I hope this is clear. Any other questions? Okay, now going on to the next one, that is a cabinet mission plan. Now, the cabinet mission plan, the three important leaders of the British cabinet would be sent to India to discuss on the transfer of power. To discuss on the transfer of power, how we are going to transfer the power, to whom to transfer the power, and how to transfer the power. As I told, the three important things which are always a concern for the British. Now, if you see the notes in the cabinet mission plan, I have given you the leaders: Dr. Patrick Lawrence, Stafford Cripps, the same person who came in 1942. Okay, the Stafford Cripps, and A.V. Alexander. Now, all the three, in addition to that, Lord Wavell, who was the Governor General, would also be involved in the cabinet mission plan. Now, what is the objective of the cabinet mission plan? To get an agreement for the Indian leaders in framing the constitution, to formulate a constitution making body. As I told that, constituent assembly would be formed, and to establish the executive council in support of major political parties. Now, what this cabinet mission plan would say is we are going to make a common union with three different groupings. Now, if you see this way, what is the cabinet mission plan? Now, could you recollect what are the different provinces? How many provinces were there by the time of 1945 in India? British provinces. Could anyone recollect the number? No. There were 11. There were 11 British provinces. Could you name? I gave you the trick to remember all 11. Bengal? Yeah. Assam, you can start
Bengal,
with Northeast.
Orissa.
You can come down. Yeah, very good. Assam, Bengal, very good. Then
Central provinces.
very good. UP and CP, United Provinces and
United
Central Provinces.
UP.
Then here, very good.
Province, Sindh and Northwest
Bihar,
Frontier
Odisha.
Province.
Okay. Punjab and Sindh
Bihar,
and
Odisha. Yeah.
NWFP. NWFP. Then Sindh and Punjab. Then Bombay and Madras. Bombay and Madras.
Pakistan.
This is Madras, this is Bombay. I hope all the 11 provinces are clear. Assam, Bengal, UP, CP. Then This is Bengal. This particular region is Bengal. Assam, Bengal, United Province, Central Province, Bihar, Odisha, Madras, Bombay, Sindh, Punjab, and Northwestern Frontier Province. These are the 11 provinces which are there in British India. And could you quickly recollect which are Muslim majority and which are Hindu majority? Which are NWFP?
NWF is the Bihar.
Yeah,
Right. Bengal is
in
yeah.
Northwest. So let me group it. So there are three groupings. One is Northwest Frontier Province, Sindh and Punjab are Muslim majority in the Northwest. Then we have the Muslim majority regions in the East. Muslim majority regions in the East. That is Assam and Bengal. They were also Muslim majority. This, the Assam and Bengal, let me put it like this way. The Assam and Bengal, one group. This is Muslim majority. This is Muslim majority, and the remaining are Hindu majority. Now, what this cabinet mission plan has said is we are going to make three groupings of India. One grouping is Group A, one group is Group B, one group is Group C. One group is Group C. That is, Group A consists of all Hindu majority regions or all Hindu majority provinces. Group B consists of Muslim majority provinces in Northwest. And Group C consists of Muslim majority regions in eastern part of India. I hope this grouping is clear. That means if the question comes, which of the following are there in Group A? Okay, they may give Bengal, Assam, Bihar, Odisha. Which one of the following are correct? 1, 2 correct, 1, 2, 3 correct. So I hope these kind of questions you'll be able to do this very clearly. Now, thanks. So once what this cabinet mission plan says
Yes, sir.
is we are going to make India into three groupings. Now, Group A would make the constitution for this one. Okay, when Group A is making, Group B and Group C would be silent. They would not do anything. That means Group A would make constitution for this Group A provinces. Group B would make constitution for Group B provinces. Group C would make the constitution for these provinces. That means when A is making constitution, B and C would be silent. When B is making constitution, A and C would be spectators. When A and B would be idling, C would be making the constitution. I hope this is clear. That means literally there would be three constitutions, three regional constitutions. In addition to that, all the three would come together and make a common constitution for India. Here, in the common constitution, they would only talk about subjects like defense or external relations and currency. Defense, external relations and currency. This is something like America. External relations and currency. This is something like America, which we call it as a truly federal country. A truly federal country. Okay, that is only some important union government subjects such as defense, external relations and currency would be dealt by the common constitution, and remaining all of these would be dealt by regional constitutions. So whether there should be minority rights, whether there should be reservations or not, how the groupings should be governed, everything would be decided by their own internal constitution. For example, in USA, there are 50 states, and each of the 50 states is having its own constitution. We are going to follow that US model approach. That is, India would be, it is not today, we call it as Union of India. Okay, it is not Union of India, it is United States of India, something like the US model, where states would come together to make the constitution. I hope this grouping or cabinet mission plan is clear. What exactly is this? That means there are three groupings. Each group would make their individual constitution, and when making the final constitution, this would be like a loose federation with a very limited power to the central government, whereas almost all the powers for the administration would be vested with the regional groupings itself. Now, once this we can say would be like a last attempt to save the country from partition.
That means to save the country from partition, maybe this could have been a last approach which the British have adopted. Now, Indian National Congress and Muslim League. What would be the responses of Indian National Congress and Muslim League? Now, there is some dilemma on how this grouping should be made. Now, what is the question is whether these groupings, they are saying that there should be groupings or there are groupings. Now, whether the groupings are compulsory or optional, now this is something open ended. That is, the cabinet mission plan did not make any attempt to ensure that these groupings are you can say optional or mandatory. That is, if this grouping is optional, now Indian National Congress said that these groupings are optional. That is, whether we have optional the groupings or not, it is left to the individual states to determine. Now, what Congress believed is, though it is Muslim majority areas, if you recollect, even in Muslim majority areas, it is not Muslim League who was in power, which was in power. It is the right-wing Muslim parties which were in power, where Congress has made the pact and were able to form the government. Now, if this grouping is optional, then what Congress thought is, let us not have the groupings at all. Let us make a single constitution. But whereas what Muslim League thought, or what Muslim League interpreted, is these groupings are mandatory or compulsory. Now, they had their own interpretation and the debate was going on. Now, the British government had made no attempt to clarify this, whether this is optional or whether this is compulsory. The Muslim League felt that this grouping is compulsory. Because this grouping is compulsory, we would be having the choice to make the constitution for our provinces where there is Muslim majority regions. But because the cabinet mission plan did not make what is optional and what is compulsory, this cabinet mission plan could not succeed. Now, finally, the cabinet mission plan would be rejected both by Congress and Muslim League. Why it would be rejected by Congress and Muslim League? Because Congress felt it would be optional, but British government later clarifies that this would be compulsory. Now, why Muslim League would reject, though it is in favor of this? Why Muslim League would reject is because even if the groupings are compulsory, what Muslim League felt is it might be impossible for me to win the elections in these places. Now, Muslim League does not want anything less than a complete nation, a separate nation, that is Pakistan. Now, it was in no mood to negotiate either with Congress or with British for anything less than Pakistan. Now, in fact, what the Muslim League, what the Pakistan was demanded was not the current day Pakistan, but on the western side till Lucknow, almost till Uttar Pradesh, and on the eastern side till Calcutta. Even Calcutta should be part of the East Pakistan. This was a proposal made by Muslim League. Now, when Indian National Congress felt that the partition is inevitable, the only option the Indian National Congress had was to reduce the size of Pakistan. Now, what Jinnah asked was the Pakistan almost up to Lucknow, but what he got is a Pakistan which is almost up to Wagah border. You know, here there is a Wagah border, which is a boundary, and what he expected is till Calcutta, but what he got in return is the border between Indo-Bangladesh border. That means what Indian National Congress could not do, it could not avoid partition. But what it could do, it tried to reduce the size of Pakistan. Now, the cabinet mission plan failed to make or failed to bring Indian National Congress or Muslim League on the single table. It closed the door for the negotiation on partition, but it kept the window open. The cabinet mission plan has kept the last window open to save the country from partition. This window of opportunity was neither utilized by Congress nor utilized by Muslim League. And that is why once the window is closed, once the cabinet mission plan was not successful, then there is no other option but to go with partition. Okay, I hope the cabinet mission plan is clear. What exactly the cabinet mission plan demanded, what Muslim League demanded, what Congress demanded, why it could not succeed. Any questions till now?
Sir, why didn't they give? I mean, they don't have a plan like this. Like every
Yeah,
province can individually
yeah.
decide which
See,
constitution they
the
want.
reason is, yeah,
Why
yeah,
did they do
yeah,
grouping?
please.
And how many? I mean, what is the approximate
See,
population among these
the
three groups? Like,
population,
are they
I'll
equal?
answer your second question first. So, the population at the time of independence was about 30 crores. And the population, the Muslim population was one third, approximately one third. Now, if you take the whole Indian subcontinent, so it was 10 crores of population, but it is not like the 10 crores were living here and here. The Muslim population was scattered across throughout India, as well as the Hindu population. That means over time, for centuries together, the Hindus and Muslims were living. Now, since the time of like 7th century, the Islam when it came to India, since then it spread to different parts of the country. That means this 10 crore of population, it is not like 10 crores are situated here and here. The 10 crores of population was scattered across the country, across the Indian subcontinent, as well as the remaining 20 crores. The Hindu population also. It is not like only in India we are having Indian Hindu population, but Hindu population is also scattered in the this region as well as this region. So the whole population was something like 30 crores. Now during partition, what happened? This is the largest migration ever happened in human history. Largest migration ever happened in recorded human history. About 1.5 crores of population. Imagine the total population is 30 crores. 1.5 crores of population had to cross the borders. That is, all Hindus would be coming to what is called India, and all the Muslims would be going up to what is called Pakistan. The same thing happened on this border as well. Okay. So, is this did I answer your question? The second question? Yeah. The first question was why not the
Yes, sir. Yeah,
states
yeah.
are making their own constitutions, unlike USA. The major reason why India is not like USA. India is what, as I told, it is called. If you see Article 1 of Constitution, we call India as Union of States. Union of States. Whereas USA it is United States. Now, what is the difference? Union of States and United States. Now, Union of States means the union is formed and states would be formed from here. States would be formed from here. That is, what happened the way India is created is first we created the union at the top, and from union the power is flowing towards the states. That means we are creating the states out of this one. That means we have a common union. Now, this common union is creating this one. And as I told, what is more important for India to nurture is the idea of nationalism, because the nation building activity is a very, you can say, tricky thing. So, as Surendranath Banerjee wrote, India is a nation in making. He wrote in 1900s. You could recollect Surendranath Banerjee, one of the most important moderate leaders of Congress. He said, India is a nation in making. What is completely true is even today, 2020, this statement remains true. We are still nation in the making. That means our nation building activity is not complete yet. There are a lot of challenges to our nation building activity. So, what our constitution makers felt, if you give more power or more autonomy to the provinces, there could be tendencies of suppression. Okay, there could be tendencies of suppression. If you make it everything, you can say decentralized, they can exit from the union as well. Now, what is more important for the constitution makers was keeping the union together. That means how to preserve this union together. This is most important thing. Now, at the same time, if you keep very strong or a strong center, again it would be dangerous. If you keep a weak center, it would be dangerous. So that is why they did not give more powers to the provinces. But the way the USA is formed is something different. In US, how it is formed is the states came together. There were 13 English colonies. Now all the 13 English colonies, the northern colonies, middle colonies, and the southern colonies, they came together and they formed a common union. That means the way the US is formed, the way India is formed is completely different. That is why Indian model of federation is completely opposite to that of US model of federation. In India, we follow the Canadian model of federation, like where union is having more powers. In USA, the states having more powers. because in USA the states, there are 50 states and there will be 50 states, because the states are more powerful. Only few powers are given to the center, but in India few powers are given to the states and majority of the important powers are with center itself. Right? Because the major reason is to preserve the union or preserve the nation. I hope this is clear why we are not giving more autonomy to the provinces. Do let me know if it's, yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
my question. Still different. Like my point, like if we
yeah,
Canada
yeah.
kind of
We adopted
model,
the
will it
Canadian
be
model of
acceptable to both
federation only.
Congress and
We adopted
Muslim League?
the federation where union is more powerful than states. That is,
If if cabinet mission plan had the cabinet mission plan proposed like US kind of thing where states have more power,
no, Muslim League would Muslim
would
League
it
would
have
straight
been
away deny
acceptable
that.
to both
What
Congress
Muslim
and
League
Muslim League,
wanted
like
is
Indian sub?
more powers to the provinces. But what Congress wanted is more powers to the union. Now this is where the debate started. So Congress and Muslim League could never come to an agreement on this, because what Muslim League
Okay,
felt is if we are having a common union, then we would be just like the Kashmir today. Okay, in fact, what Muslim League expected is something like Kashmir, but is in theory we had Article 370. That means in theory, though it is a Muslim majority region, the Kashmir region, in theory we said like Article 370 is there. But in practice, did we really keep up Article 370? Through judiciary, through legislature, through executive, through all the means, the Indian government tried to circumvent Article 370. That is what the dissatisfaction among the Kashmiris, right? So this is what the Muslim League also felt. Like if we are given given the province status, then at any time the union government can take over the power. This Muslim League never wanted to happen. That's why it never accepted that. What Muslim League wanted is a complete country altogether, because it was never less than a country it would be accepting. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. I hope this is clear on cabinet mission plan why it failed. Now, once the cabinet mission plan failed, then the government decided that there would be no other alternative to keep Muslim League and Indian National Congress together. Now, what the British government has said that we are going to form an interim government. Now, this interim government would have the members of both Congress as well as Muslim League. Now, they would be taking over the government. That is the transition government. That is called, they call it as interim government. Now, this interim government had members of Congress as Muslim League both. Now, in interim government, you will see that there are people like Liaquat Ali Khan from Muslim League. He was a staunch opposer of Indian National Congress and its Hindutva ideology. Now, why Jinnah proposed Liaquat Ali Khan is he will disrupt the house from within. That means he wanted to show to the British as well as to the world that we Indians, that is Hindus and Muslims, can never rule together. That is, we can never rule together. That means, though the interim government, the Muslim League and Congress had to work together, here we will see that none of the proposals were moving forward. Now, just like what the Swarajist party has done, if you could recollect Swarajist party, what was the agenda of Swarajist party? To disrupt the house from within. Now, this is the way the Muslim League also adopted. In fact, the Congress was teaching Muslim League how to behave. Okay, this is how the historians blame Congress as well. Now, in this one, the Muslim League, when it entered the house, when it was disrupting all other proceedings, then Congress was also convinced that there is no other option but to go ahead with partition or two nation. Now, this is where the Congress came to a conclusion and made a pact with Muslim League. In fact, Nehru writes a letter to the crown saying that we are okay with partition. We had no other option but to okay with partition. That means Congress reluctantly agrees to partition. Once Congress reluctantly agrees to partition, then the British crown would send the Lord Mountbatten to help India into transition. Now, Lord Mountbatten would come to India. with an agenda, as I told, how to divide the country, on what basis he has to divide the country, when to divide the country, and he also said that my first priority is of British citizens. That means I will go back in the ship. On the last ship, I will board and I will ensure that the last British citizen is safely coming or returning to our home Britain. Now, when Lord Mountbatten comes to India, now the original plan was the power transfer to Indian government would take place till 1948. Now, why partition is a very turbulent thing, because till that point of time, everything was together. Now, on what basis would you separate? Because if you separate, now both the dominions are going to suffer. Because, for example, economically, if you see, like there are the jute growing places in Bangladesh and jute mills are in Indian side. Now, if you divide the country like this, that is, all industries are here, or agricultural produce is here. That means, what would you do with industries without any raw material? And what would you do with raw material without any industries? Both are going to suffer. That is, economically, there would be suffering. In the same way, in the northwest as well, all the, you can say, the sugarcane and all the crops are grown in the Pakistan side of Punjab, whereas almost all the industries, either the rice mills or sugar mills, are located in the Indian side. Now, again, what would you do with all your crops without any industries? What would you do with industries without this one? That means economy is going to suffer. And on what way do you divide the army? On what way you divide the civil servants? Because you know that civil servants may be very likely a person might be from Karachi, posted in Delhi, a person originally from Karachi, posted in Delhi, his children studying in Bombay, maybe very likely. Now, on what basis would you divide this civil services? On what basis would you divide the army? Because army, it would have been a person from Kerala posted in the Bangladesh region. Now, on what basis would you divide the army? On what basis you divide the intelligence agencies? I hope you know that there is intelligence agencies like RAW and ISI. Now, RAW might know each and every, this person might be a person working in RAW, might be knowing each and every details of Pakistan, because earlier he might be serving in here. Now, when the same person is working for Indian government, then he knows all the secrets of the opposite side. In the same way, when you are creating ISI, the person of ISI might know each and every detail of the Indian intelligence because he was earlier working together. Now, this is something like the operational challenges. In addition to that, in addition to the operation challenges, how would you ensure that the people of 1.5 crores of population would be transported from, or would be transferred from one country to the other country? Now, as you know that in those times, the transportation and communication were not as today. Even by today's technology, like you can see that we have lot of communication advances, lot of transportation facilities. Even then, we have seen the problems of migrations. I've noticed this, the problems of migrations are still very rampant in country like India, with lot of poverty, lot of illiteracy. Imagine the year 1940s, 1950s. On what basis would you do the partition? Now, these are some questions which were troubling everyone. On what basis would you divide the country? Now, within no time, now Mountbatten was in a hurry. Now, Lord Mountbatten was in a hurry. No one knows why he was in a hurry. That means what he did not understand is he was dividing a subcontinent. That is the whole subcontinent. That means, as I told, India is a huge country. Now, on what basis would you divide the country? Whatever basis you create, now it is going to create a lot of challenges. Not only on the, you can say, the operational front, but also on the procedural front, but also on the humanitarian grounds. Because people had no idea, even the government had no idea whether this partition is going to be permanent or temporary as well. Whether are we going to return to our countries or return to our homes or not. This is something, everything was in dilemma. No party had any answers for that. Now, during this time, as I told, Lord Mountbatten is at least 2 years to take to do the partition. As I told, 1948 was decided as a year of transfer of power, but no one knows why Lord Mountbatten was in a complete hurry, but within no time, 15th August was decided as the day of partition. Now you can see this the way the this is what we call it as the West Pakistan. This is what we call it as East Pakistan, and you can see the Radcliffe line even today. Sir Radcliffe was brought from London, and with outdated maps and obsolete data, he started dividing the subcontinent. That means he never went into the field. In fact, Lord Radcliffe was so much ashamed of his work that he did not take the remuneration as well. He said, I have not done a good job. I know that I have not done a good job. I do not want any remuneration for my work. But this Radcliffe line became a boiling point for further conflicts between India and Pakistan. Even today, whatever the challenges between the border conflicts between India and Pakistan, we can see it is because of the border divisions. And this has become to movement of refugees upon the partition from both Indian side and Pakistani side. You can see people from all the borders, not only from the borders, even people living in as far as Uttar Pradesh. They had no, they had no you can say clarity whether they would return to their homes, whether they not return to their homes. So with everything they had, they started their journey towards the other country. Now, because of this partition, it is not only you can say economical or social or political, but it is also psychological. Many people would lose their homes. Maybe some photographs you would have seen, or some movies also that were there regarding the partition. As I told, 1.5 crores of population, that is 15 million people, were displaced, and at least 1 million were transported. You can see people moving in partition, like everything they had on the trucks, trains, or ships, or on foot, whatever they had, they used to carry with no clear idea whether they'll return to their homes or not. But the wounds of partition still remain for many sections of country. Okay, now India started making its constitution by having a constituent assembly. In the same way, Pakistan also started making the constitution by its constituent assembly. In your maybe in your polity class, you learn more about the constituent assembly, who are the members, what was the working of the constituent assembly. But just to complete our topic or discussion, I given the notes, the factual information, who are the committees often asked in your exam. So what are the all these are the factual questions which can be there, factual questions which can be asked. Again, in your notes, I given all important committees, subcommittees, the contribution of women, contribution of different sections of society. Maybe I've given in a flowchart manner, which would help you out in your exam. So this is something on the partition and the aftermath of that. Maybe further you would learn in your polity class or in your IR class or in world history class. So what would be this impacts? So any other questions till now? Please do let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I'll take it as a no. Then a quick round, maybe you can spend some time if you have any other questions or concerns on preparation. So now luckily you got some 100 days additional, okay, for the prelims in this unfortunate events. Okay, so I hope you'll utilize the maximum out of this. So because you got some time to revisit those places which you are having doubts, so you can make use of this 100 days till 4th of October. So any other questions, you can always contact, you can approach. If you have any questions, to message and I'll get the message. Once you message to Srinivas sir, I'll get all the messages to me. So any other feedback or anything you wanted to share, please feel free. So from my side, I'm going to give you the notes, whatever we were discussing on, and one test we'll be conducting. Maybe I'll send you the test paper. You can write the answers and submit. I can correct and send it back to you. So anything else you are expecting, please feel free. Please feel free to share. Okay, if not, I'll take it as a no. Then all the best for your preparation. Hope to see you in the mains preparation and the personality test preparation again. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Yeah, yes, sir.
Hello.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, sir, you can just leave off,
okay,
sir.
okay.
I
I'll
just
exit
wanted
from
to tell
this.
the students to come on. And hello. Yeah, please, everybody, you join by 10, sharp 10. Otherwise, it's like we have to wait, and whether we should wait or we should not wait, we don't know. So from tomorrow onwards, even if it's a one person attending, we will start at 10 o'clock. Okay, and madam also getting well. So the class